Welcome to the Sportsman's Voice podcast, your inside connection to outdoor legislation. From the Beltway to policy happening your way, we're covering it all. I'm your host, Fred Bird. Join us as we explore public land access, wildlife and fisheries management, Second Amendment rights, the triumphs that shape our nation, the sports we all love, and the stories that fuel our passion for the great outdoors. This is the Sportsman's Voice podcast. All right, it's my pleasure now to welcome in the Chief Operating Officer for the Wild Sheep Foundation, Mr. Corey Mason, also board member here at Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. It's been a great day today at the NAS Summit.
Yeah, it's good to have you back on the program. It's been a little bit, but always a good conversation. We're going to talk a little fair chase today, maybe get a status update of your organization, what's going on. But obviously, our two organizations work together in tandem on quite a many issues. And as of late, the issue of drones, specifically, you've seen a trend being used for game recovery. Is this a fair chase issue? How does that shake out? There's obviously opinions that we worry about wanton waste. Do we do give every effort to recover our game? Obviously, the pre-scouting stuff, we kind of have an established opinion on fair chase and what that looks like. But what are your thoughts? Where are we at? How does fair chase play into the new technologies? And should we be going down this road as best, to do our best as sportsmen and women to not, prevent some wanton waste, not intentional, but, go recover. That's what we're out there for.
You bet. Yeah, no, it's a big topic, and obviously, someone's position, how they hunt, where they hunt, the type of equipment they hunt with, clearly defines, how they view ethics, and that's fair to some capacity. But when we sort of then couch it under the context of fair chase, it starts narrowing that discussion, in my opinion. Meaning, are we employing technologies that give the hunter an unfair advantage over the game? And one you touched on, it's very near and dear to my heart, and then we'll step into recovery, but, it's scouting. And, that was a bill that recently passed Montana last legislative session, Senate Bill 106, that looks specifically, it changed some nuances in that particular piece of legislation that already existed, but defined aircraft to manned or unmanned, functionally. So then drones were covered within that, because there were a number of things that were happening. People were either flying for, I don't wanna necessarily say for profit, but they were flying to gather information, and then sharing that information. However they did that, I don't know. But then secondarily, people were flying for their own use, real time. Drones that could scout the next ridge over or whatever. And I would hope that the community could come together and say, yeah, that's not fair chase. And kudos to Montana legislature that said, no, we're going to narrow this thing down, create some sideboards on what's allowed, the amount of time. Most people are familiar with the Alaska example of 24 hours, and Montana adapted very similar to that, and then define some things that are allowed and not allowed. And so now you step that into the other use of technology, game cameras, whatever. But now we look at this from a game recovery standpoint, and that application, real time cameras as well, and now we step this into game recovery. Well, the animal has either been harvested or has been shot at, whatever the scenario might be. The sportsman now has a responsibility to recover that animal. And it gets gray really fast in my mind, how that technology is being used, who's using it. And it is I don't know of other states, you may know of other states that have reached into that legislatively. And if there are examples of that, I'd be really interested.
I will follow up with you because I know there are, but I just can't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But I don't wanna speak out of school on a state. I don't wanna call a state out without being 100%, but I know there are at least 1 or 2 that are doing it, and it's like a for-profit thing. Like, guys are being subbed out with use of thermal imaging on their drones, and, like, again, on the surface of it, great, but what are I hate to be negative Nancy here, but, like, human beings always find, like, a wrinkle and take advantage of something that initially wasn't intended to be that way, but, "Oh, I stumbled onto this."
Yeah, no, is it so it's sort of a kind of a dichotomy? Is it the next evolution of using, tracking dogs that have been used for down
That
game?
exactly right.
I'm very familiar with that, And those are services that will be provided typically at a fee, and hunters are typically very grateful to pay it to recover that buck, doe, whatever it might be. Now, this is the next advancement, but it's hard to put a blanket statement on, is this ethical, is it not?
Mhm.
A down game that's in heavily dense woods, yeah, you'd like to say it's helpful for that, but I don't know. It's a tough one. It's a really tough one, because I think it very quickly goes past the ethics of trying to recover an animal, and then maybe the animal's alive, maybe it's pushed, maybe what it might be, but the ethical pursuit and recovery is part of the experience as well, and no one wants to lose an animal, but it's part of it.
Right, and you took the words right out of my mouth, and it's an unfortunate part of it, but alas, you mentioned the dog track, and where I come from, they can't charge for it legally. So I don't know how other states are. And I always, when I heard about the other states that are doing it with the thermals, it felt dirty to me. Like again, it's not for me to say, but I think on the face of it, it's a good service. But again, as you articulated, there's always it needs parameters, it needs borders, and you think about cell phone yeah, cell phone cams are, out there. A lot of states have that 24-hour rule. You can't go out and hunt it. Once you get a ping, guys staying up till 1 in the morning, like you can't even go out there in the morning when sun comes up. So yeah, I guess the intel stuff, there's an advantage to it, and people like that, and it's part of the hobby and their experience. But um, also part of that experience is not being successful all the time, right? And that gets into game management and it's going to take some years to study this stuff wherever it's legal and what is the effect on it. Are we seeing a higher success rate? And what is that doing for herds? Is that healthy for herds? Is there a healthy ecosystem balance there? And then you look at stuff like wild sheep, where you have a limited opportunity over something that's out there. Not everyone can go do it. And now all of a sudden, now if reconnaissance is being done by guides and outfitters. Like, what does that look like? Is it detrimental to those sheep populations? What are your thoughts on
Yeah,
that?
I see, I think very recently, so I just rewind a couple of weeks. So my daughter took a nice buck over Thanksgiving holiday. She made a really clean shot, nice lung shot. Animal ran, whatever, 150 yards, but it ran down into a canyon, super thick, dense cover. It took us an hour to recover that animal blood trailing, with very little blood, but it was a significant experience for us. And again, you always want to recover the animal. I mean, that's obviously without question.
Mhm.
But it was an important part of that experience for us and how sort of elated we were at the end of that trail to find that deer. And it sort of makes me then step into the fact that, you shoot at an animal. I'll just continue to use deer as the example. You shoot at the animal and you think you hit it, you're not sure. Well, now are you deploying a drone to recover a deer that you missed? What does that do?
Mhm.
I don't know. And then, you move that to other species and you really extend that to species like sheep and where there's limited opportunity on the landscape. People wait 5, 10, 20 years to draw a tag. And so is it more legitimate to be able to spend more time to do that? I would say no. Of course. What impact does that have on management of that species? All of those things that impact management plans that are based on survivability, reproductive rates and all of that. It definitely starts playing into that equation that you use to manage science in a modern day.
100%. And that's what's going to be the driving force. I mean, but like you said, unfortunately, this stuff is so new. I don't think anyone, any state has a data set yet that they can go off of. It's so new. And is it legal? Is it not legal? If it's cropping up, have legislators even had the opportunity with the state agency to look at this? Well, more importantly, the state agency first, and then, you know, do we update this stuff? Shed hunting has become part of this too, and you see the reaction to the drones and the animals that will hear the buzzing and look up, and it is, for lack of a better term, it's harassment, really. I mean, it's so competitive with shed hunting, especially out by you guys. It's like this need to constantly be ahead and outdo each other, and it's just, I don't know how to really say this. So it's like it's taking the fun out of it. It's taking the heritage part out of it, and it's all for profit, and that is, like, completely contradictory to what we're about, North American model of conservation, how we do all this, and if it's just for profit, we're resetting the timeline back to the 1900s before Pittman Robinson. What are we doing?
Yeah, there's various motives of using, increased technology, better bullets, whatever you wanna sort of put on the table there for discussion. But, one of those motives, unfortunately, is maybe a compressed time schedule in which people head to the outdoors. But another one of those is candidly laziness. They're not in shape. And maybe that's bold to say, but it's just the truth. I don't think anybody could wholeheartedly argue with that. And then number two, many people, not all, of course, but many people aren't willing to put the effort in on it,
Yeah.
to go and go over the next ridge and put the miles in and earn it, if you will.
Mhm.
And that's not wrong, but that's not where then you put the Band-Aid of technology on and say, "Do my job for me because I'm not willing and capable to do it." That's the issue I have with the use of technology in those capacities, because then it's now making it the use of it is, number 1, to make it just easier for you, and then number 2, it's like it's creating an artificial, unfair advantage, if you will, to the hunter over their, quarry. So, that's problematic to me on a lot of fronts.
Another question I had about this, especially in the use of recovery, and again, getting back to things start off with well-intended intentions, but we always find a way to bastardize these things. So I'm going out there, I'm using a drone, or I get a service to do this. What's stopping them? Like, how do you enforce the law? I'm going out to recover a deer. Oh, but also I just saw this 10 pointer over there. I know where they're hanging out in this thicket, or they're in this draw, and nothing's stopping them from cataloging that information. I was recovering a deer, so theoretically, the next day, go out to that draw and hunt that 10-point buck. Like, there is no enforcement mechanism on that. It's you have to prove it. And this is some of the ethical stuff, right?
It is. It's sort of like that spider web effect. I pull on one piece and I'm touching everything else,
Mhm.
because, yeah, I mean, there's some states, of course, that have the 24-hour recovery or use of drones than to go to field. But would that apply in the sense of recovery? Well, it would make sense for it not to apply because you're trying to recover an animal before it spoils or it's consumed by predators or lost to the landscape. Well, then, yeah, that's a very likely opportunity that could arise, So for a lot of reasons, it doesn't feel right.
What do you think the future of this in the next couple of years is? It feels like more legislatures are starting to address this. It's cropping up, and events like this. It's very helpful for the collaboration. It, we're doing it in Montana. Okay, in New Hampshire, how can we head this off, or how can we work together? What did you guys do to make a successful thing work? And that's the value of NASC and this summit, right?
That's exactly the value of this, to have discussions, to make people aware. I'm giving a presentation on this, based on this Montana case study,
Yeah.
and really opening it in the sense of coming soon to a state near you,
Right.
and awareness, and create awareness here and educate around it. Not saying this is the exact way to do it, but this is what was done in this particular state or this particular case. And so I absolutely see some legislative action being taken over, the use of drones in additional capacities such as game recovery coming, because these discussions are so new. Like you say, it's just a new item and people are trying to sort out how they feel about it. How is this impacting the resources? How do my hunters in my state feel about this? And that's going to vary around, where they are, how they hunt, what's the vegetation like, and but I certainly do see some of that coming because unfortunately in the day and age, you can't really legislate ethics,
Right.
but you can items that impact fair chase and management of our wildlife resources, and that's where pieces of legislation come into play.
When we talk about letting the science dictate, so we have our game managers at the state agencies, and they always have their goals, their zone goals or carrying capacity goals with herds. And again, deer's a great one to work on. Um, and this line of thought has brought something to my mind, and I imagine yours as well, is the loss of an animal, and a deer in our example. I've never thought to ask if that's part of the equation when game managers are hitting their goals, right? It's always on hunter effort, hunter take. I think we generally in our space we work with a 20% success rate of all the sportsmen and women that go afield, and they kind of work around that. But now I'm wondering, like, do they account for those? Is there a mean in there that they use for uncoverable deer? What does that look like? And if that is part of that science, and now you're being 100% successful of recovering everything, and again, on the surface of it, like, that's great. You get to take that animal home, you get to feed your family, everything that we're out there doing, but now I think this is a question to ask. They gotta ask it if they're not considering it, right? I mean, it's just so new and everything's changing so fast. We great tools like Onyx and things like that can compile with like Onyx was great when it's still great. It helps me out, but now as I'm doing all this reconnaissance on my phone instead of, I can catch a lot more information in my living room than if I could get out there and walk it, right? And to your point, like there's a balance there. It's a great tool. I love the guys over there. I use it. It helps. I don't think there's an ethical issue with that. But then you couple that with this technology we're talking about. Okay. And not Onyx specific. I'm not picking on Onyx. Again, love those guys. But that technology and its instant information, it's constantly being updated, add to real time reconnaissance. Like,
Yeah, it gets complex, and like you
yeah.
said, maybe it's not each individual piece, but collectively, it sorta moves the scales,
Mm.
and to your question about our wounding rates, are they accounted for? And I can tell you from helping to derive migratory game bird management plans and big game management plans that wounding loss is typically, and I
Yeah.
say I'm using wounding loss interchangeably with downed and unrecovered animals, and
Hmm.
maybe that's not fair, but for an example, because they're different, no doubt. One's survivable, of course, and the other is a lost animal, lost, if you will, to the woods. But so those things are generally speaking accounted for. But does that change? Yeah, the fair question.
And what does that do?
Yep.
You think of like, we got coyote problems. Everyone's got coyote problems, but like some places are more prevalent and you could shoot a deer and then a couple hours later finally track it down and it's already been like tore up.
Yeah.
Right. So what I'm saying is that played into feeding those coyotes. That deer breaks down, it's going back into the ecosystem and it's taking care of a bunch of other critters, non-game species, game species like fur bears. Like, so there, it has its place. Very interesting. I'm gonna go back home and ask my game managers, like, what that number looks like and how they equate that because that's an important piece, and I don't think people actually think about that unless you're actually doing it.
Well, anything that changes method of harvest, type of harvest, and that changes anywhere from the style of hunting
Mhm.
to projectile use.
Right.
Lots of different discussions around that, of course. And then again, experience of hunter. So all of those things do equate into ultimately sort of that equation of what determines and what looks like hunting success, and they're all important. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a complex answer. Again, I know how I feel about it
Yeah.
personally, but I do see more coming in the very near future on the topic. And then, as part of that, what will come out of this that we're not even thinking about?
Right.
Because clearly that's like, would we have thought about drones for recovering game 10 years ago? Well, probably not.
Yeah.
I've used drones personally for vegetation analysis,
Yeah.
for all different kinds of things from a scientific management standpoint, good and right uses of technology that really helped us either understand landscapes better. They're used them for all kinds of tools now. We use them now most recently for a seeding project in very remote landscapes
Yeah.
to put seed on landscapes that are highly erodible. So,
Yeah. There's always a double side to this stuff, right?
yep,
I I guess it's you gotta have an ethic, you gotta have integrity, and unfortunately, not everyone has that, so now we gotta write laws, and we gotta write regulations, and create statutes, so, again, it is what it is. I hate copping out like that, but we just don't know enough right now, and we're gonna have to control some of it because there are gonna be bad actors that take advantage, and then that screws it up for the rest of us, and especially the resource.
well, to your point, that's exactly why things like the NAS Summit are so beneficial. Obviously, it continues to connect legislators and like-minded people in our community to continue to sharpen the sword and get better and better at what we're doing. But to have these discussion on the front end, so then maybe there's opportunity to act, whatever act looks like, responsibly and cohesively.
Yeah. It's a great conversation. I know you're gonna give a great presentation on it. I do, with the remaining time, wanna talk about Wild Sheep Foundation. What are you guys up to? What does 2026 look like for you guys? Sheep show's coming up?
Yeah, it is January 22 through 24 in Reno.
That's one of the most impressive fundraising events of the year. I'm always just wowed by what you guys are able to do in a span of like 48 hours and the funds that are generated to go right back into the mission and the resource. It's incredible.
It's a fun event. I mean, and to have so many conservation partners there from our, state and provincial governments, our tribes and First Nations that are there, and even now our international management authorities like the in the last few years, the number of Central Asian delegates and countries that are
Mm,
represented. So now that's 5 plus now. So yeah, and the dollars that are raised there, that are put right back on the ground. It is a really unique environment, and it's what's great about the sheep show in general is it's a come as you are. You see people walking around in blue jeans and I wouldn't say t-shirts because it's too cool for that, but a sweater maybe, a vest, whatever. Lots of cowboy hats and hats on, but it's a casual environment, and it's such a fun, friendly kind of environment. Lots of kids running around and people that have been there. So what's fun about this particular year, so this is our 49th sheep show this year,
wow, how
26.
about it?
And obviously there's a huge, big, steep on-ramp being built right now for the 2027 show, which would be the 50th. And so that'll be a bash of all bashes, I assure you that. So
Heck yeah. That's gonna be a lot of fun. I'm curious though, internationally, who is showing up?
yeah, so we have a number of the Central Asian countries. Mongolia has a significant delegate there.
Mhm.
So last year at the sheep show, we were just a small part of helping stand up, functionally what would be equivalent to like our WAFWA in the United States, the Western Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies, Wild Sheep Initiative, which is the consortium of all sheep states. They come together, obviously, and have this Wild Sheep Initiative, which is the information exchange and survey sharing and all that. And that annual meeting takes place at the sheep show of the Wild Sheep Initiative. And so it's the partners that come together to work with each other. And then, of course, with organizations like Wild Sheep Foundation. So really spawning from that model, these Central Asian countries, there were 5 initially. And again, each is an independent country versus, states within the United States. They now have built an agreement in which they're working collectively, which has not happened in the past.
No kidding.
So it sounds simple, but it's really an important advancement. And now they've had their second meeting, which Wild Sheep Foundation has helped facilitate. And really importantly, we're not guiding and directed, whether we are a partner from the side, letting them self-direct their conservation needs. And as part of that, one of the outcomes of that is a baseline inventory to take place over the next 2 years within the Central Asian countries of all their mountain ungulates. So we just
Wow.
supported and committed hundreds of thousands of dollars for all these surveys to take place within those Central Asian countries. So some huge momentums that are taking place there.
That's really cool. I mean, you look at this summit, we talk about how our issues are they're nonpartisan. You can take all that out when you go into a duck blind or you go on a sheep hunt, you're not asking what's in front of your name, who you voted for. It is interesting to hear this almost it is created internationally. You have probably countries that politically don't see eye to eye, but the scientists and the people that care about your mountainous ungulates,
Yep.
that crosses political boundaries and those in charge, their ideologies, because everyone's in it for the resource. I don't know, I think that's pretty cool. I get all Pollyannish about it, and I try not to, but I guess what I'm getting to is our issues transcend the BS, and internationally, obviously, you guys are doing it, and that's really cool.
It's super rewarding. And I think it is something to be sort of almost childlike eager about
Yeah.
because it's fair. You sort of think about where we were from a conservation standpoint, and there's some of the world's preeminent scientists in those countries, but
Mhm.
there wasn't a collaborative body of work taking place, whether it was independent, but yet there's your transboundary, there's your migratory species from country to country, and now building a collective of those countries' science body to manage those species across those landscapes, which is fantastic. And then, of course, that model has been super successful in North America. And I say North America because US working collaboratively with our Canadian provinces and into Mexico as well. I mean, there's a huge body of work taking place in Mexico. There's a Mexico initiative in which these landowners are working collectively, not only for desert bighorn sheep, but they're doing so for mule deer and coos deer and
Mm,
many other things. And they're standing up as a consortium of landowners that are facing things in their own political environment that are not conducive to hunting right now in Mexico.
yeah,
So, CITES listings and all these kind of things. So without that collective, we all fall.
that's great stuff. People always ask that aren't in the know and, tell people what the less than 1% T-shirt's all about.
Yeah,
That's neat.
that's a super fun club. So at the sheep show, I believe it's on Friday, the less than one club, people can participate and be a part of, and it means that you have not taken a wild sheep. And so they come in, they participate. There's a huge amount of energy around it. People that are aspiring for the opportunity, they're probably continuing to apply for tags, but their name hasn't been drawn out of that hopper yet at whatever state level, maybe multiple state level. And so at the sheep show, they have the greatest odds they'll ever have because if they're in that room and they've put their name in and applied, they have a chance to win one of several sheep hunts.
Mhm.
And so there's a huge amount of hoop and hollering if their name is selected. And if you're not
Mhm.
present, sad for your luck.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so every
Dang.
now and then you get that, but if when they're in the room and they get it, it is that person's opportunity to go on a sheep hunt, and it's not I mean, it's the full hunt. It's everything, and so, yeah, it's a huge celebration. That room is packed. I
Yes.
should know offhand, but, 1,000 people in the room,
Yes.
and it's incredible.
That's remarkable.
Yeah.
I watched from afar socially to see what you guys are doing, and a couple buddies are in the room of mine, and I'm just like, golly days, consistently every year, and then it seems to that benchmark goes up. So
Yeah.
you guys are doing great work, obviously, and we love the partnership and obviously your leadership on our board and just all the collaboration is great. And it's just nice to, here at the end of the year to celebrate all that, have you here and appreciate you coming on the podcast once again to talk about that good work. Um, Before you head out, I got some rapid fire questions. Well, rapid, I got two anyway. I want to ask it.
Fire away.
So, let's see here. What's your earliest memory in the outdoors, hunting, fishing, or just exploring?
Oh, it's a great question. So 2 immediately come to mind, so I'll give you both if it's okay.
Mhm.
One is bird hunting with my dad and grandfather in West Texas, and the other is basically following along behind my dad, greatly reducing his opportunity, because I was loud and bumbling behind him, but, I had a dad that took me hunting every chance he had to his own detriment,
Mhm.
and it was typically deer hunting, pronghorn, mule deer, whatever, so I have very clear memories of that, and I'm grateful for that time with my father and both of my grandfathers, so,
Awesome.
yeah.
Awesome. No, that is good stuff. Finish the sentence. Future generations deserve an outdoors where?
I would say public and private lands, and the reason that sort of public lands is top of mind because it's obviously a very hot issue these
Mhm.
days, and I'm not gonna say that public lands opportunities are in jeopardy, but they're certainly being challenged, and I'm thankful for organizations like CSF and many others that are in there reminding our leadership at the national and state level what public lands are for.
Very good. Yeah. Hot button issue right now for sure. We'll leave it there. I appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on and have a good ask.
Thanks for having me, I appreciate it.
All right. Hang on real quick because I'm gonna ask you to do a sounder game.
Yeah, you bet.
And you say, this is Corey Mason with the Wild Sheep Foundation. You're listening to the Sportsman's Voice podcast.
This is Corey Mason with the Wild Sheep Foundation, and you're listening to the Sportsman's Podcast.
Killer. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks for the opportunity to join you.
No, thank you. Thanks for joining us on this edition of the Sportsman's Voice podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, your support is crucial, and you can help us out right now by leaving a review, filling in those 5 stars where available, sharing this episode with friends and family, and engaging with us socially. CSF can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter. Together, we can protect the outdoor sports we love and continue to keep you informed wherever you are. That's it for this week. Until next time, we'll see you later.